Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Wednesday, January 17th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And Wendy, we just got a little bit of snow, and they said that it was done, and I don't think it's done because it looks like there's more in the radar. So we got more snow coming. Sometimes the weatherman doesn't quite get it right, but it's snow country, so that's kind of, par for the course. But it's all good, and it's an excuse to stay in and get some stuff done with the book and so forth. So I'm not unhappy or anything. I just think it's kind of amusing more than anything else. So anyway, today we are going to be talking about alignment. Specifically, that alignment is required before doing anything. And this is a topic that probably doesn't get thought about by a lot of LOA practitioners. I would even venture to guess maybe like 90% of them just don't even think about it. And it makes you wonder how often we trip ourselves up by not thinking about it, by not taking the time to do it. And indeed, I guess part of the question we'll end up answering is it really necessary to do it all? But before we get to that, I want to ask you, first of all, Wendy, because you wouldn't tell me before the beginning of the show, so this is the only way I get to find out. What's your win? What's going on that's great in your life right now?
Oh, my gosh, this was so very fun. So we know that over the last couple days, I've told you that I've given myself a challenge to put out something into the future with an end date on something I'm wanting to manifest.
Yeah.
But I said yesterday on the show I wasn't going to say specifically what it is until real manifestation starts to take place. Mm-hmm. So my commitment to myself was that every morning I would, as I was waking, spend time focusing on this thing that I desire to create.
Okay.
So I just happen, I'm not an early bird, so for me to wake up at 4 in the morning is kind of unusual. And I woke up, and so thinking, well, I'll probably fall back asleep, I thought I would take the few moments that I was awake to start thinking toward this thing that I want to create.
Okay.
So the more I thought about it, the more excited I got.
Good.
And the more excited I got, the more awake I became.
Funny how that works.
So then all of a sudden it didn't feel comfortable to be in my bed. So I went, well, what do I do now? And so I thought, well, I'm going to go downstairs and sit in my recliner where I can put on my headset and I listen to this really good meditative music. So I thought that should put me back to sleep, and, then I'll just wake up at my normal 8 o'clock time.
Okay.
So as I did that and I put on my headset, I'm in the dark and I press play, and my meditative music didn't come on. Instead, it was my Abraham CD of In the Vortex, their meditative 1-hour CD. Mm-hmm. And at first I'm like, oh, that's not what I want. And I went, but that's what I got. I think I'm going to stick with this one.
Okay, yeah. Okay, a little synchronicity there. Okay.
Yeah. So I start listening, and, I'm just kind of sitting back and relaxing and just drinking it in because I haven't listened to it in a long time. And again, I started thinking about my new project, my new thing that I'm wanting to create, and some ideas started popping. And then they started popping. And then they started getting so exciting. And then new words and a new URL had popped into my head, and I'm like, oh, surely that one is taken. So I quickly, again, in the dark, I'm reaching over to grab my cell phone, and I'm typing things in, and I'm like, is this for real? I think this URL is actually available.
Whoa.
Oh, my gosh. So then I started doing some research that was very similar to my URL, and I was getting so excited. I was beyond belief, and I went, oh, my God. And I started to see where this new URL would actually be giving me kind of a new direction or a new niche, if you will, for my coaching programs. I'm like, this so fits me. How is it I never thought of this before? And then, of course, the answer immediately came in because I wasn't ready for it before. But I'm ready for it now. And so as I was closing my eyes and listening, at this point I had blown through half of Abraham's meditative CD because my brain was so active. But by the time I was letting myself settle down, I was finding a new identity for myself.
Wow.
Based on this new URL. And I'm like, this is so me. So when the CD was over, I came upstairs. I went to bed about 6:15. By 8 o'clock in the morning, boy, I didn't want to get up. But the very cool thing is I went to my computer And I did a search, and I verified that that URL was available, and I bought it.
Very good.
For all of $8.99. And the thing that makes this so significant to me, Walt, is that in the past, I would have gotten an idea like this that would have been exciting to me, but then the Wendy brain would have gotten involved, and I would have started using critical thinking, not to be critical, but just, okay, is this really the right time? Does this make sense with what I'm wanting to do? And I would just start asking so many questions that I literally would stop any motion, not emotion, that was occurring. And this time I just went with it. I went, this is what has come to me. This is what I was asking for. Why on earth in the past did I question this stuff constantly? What do I have to lose? I spent $9 on a URL, big deal. But I got to tell you, the emotion that this has created inside of me, it has such a sense of I'm doing something I've never done before, and I feel really good about it. And I was telling my girlfriend this morning, she goes, I heard you on the show yesterday, so are you going to start throwing out teasers every day about this thing you want to create? And I'm like, well, that could be kind of fun. So today's even a bigger teaser. But what I know is, you know, the idea came on Sunday night, and here it is. Today's Thursday, right?
Today's Wednesday.
Wednesday. See, I'm kind of lost. Okay, so it's only 3 days later. And already I've started to move from just me having to manually think about it and like say, now work on thinking about this and what would it feel like, to all of a sudden now the thoughts are thinking me in only 3 days. And I have to tell you, I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about it. Like I said, my commitment was in the morning, and sometimes before I go to bed I think about it too. But now the thoughts are getting bigger, bolder, more exciting. Really had me wrapped up in just a whirlwind of, oh my gosh, my life is about to change. And so that's my win for the day.
That's pretty darn good. I mean, you're practically talking the topic already. I mean, you were practicing, you were basically trying to get yourself back into alignment so you could go back to sleep, and the universe had something else in mind. Which is pretty wild, to say the least. As for my own wins of the day, well, there are 3 of them, actually. One, today we hit 16,000 plays, so that's a good one.
Oh, my gosh. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was only this weekend we were at 15.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's flying. It's moving along really well.
Wow.
So that's a good one. Second one, we're up to 36 co-authors, and I didn't even have a chance to do anything, but they showed up anyway. I love that part. And then the third part, my wife had tried to, she wanted to play the old movie, the Celestine Prophecy, about a week and a half ago, and went to look for it and found it wasn't actually in our collection. She had actually gotten it out of the library and forgotten that, and didn't realize that we didn't have it. So I said, well, shoot, I'll just buy it for her, because, why should you have to wait? So I bought it for her. It came yesterday, and today at about noontime, she popped it into the DVD player. So okay, well, I'll take a break too. So I went down to, to sit with her and watch the movie. And it was interesting seeing it again because I hadn't seen it since I became aware of the law of attraction. So I was looking at it with new eyes, if you understand what I mean. And what I realized is that the movie did a really good job in many, many ways of, nailing how energy works, how spirit works, and so forth. And there were a few things that didn't quite work now that I understand what Abraham teaches. But for the most part, it did a pretty good job. I was impressed at how good of a job it did. And it was just nice to watch a movie it was just nice, I mean, they had some scenes of warfare in it, but the warfare were pretty minimal, and it played such a minor role. Basically, it was just to get the characters to the next scene more than anything else. So there wasn't a whole lot of violence in the movie, and it was just mostly good feeling stuff about building energy and feeling energy and so forth. And then one theme that they touched on that really resonated with me, and I found out later on from Louise after we were done watching it, it was also the exact same idea that hit her, was this idea that they proposed in the movie about how you can amplify energy by feeding energy to another person and them feeding it back to you simultaneously. And the pair of you doing it together actually build each other's energy up. So we're already committed to the idea. We're going to start trying that. We haven't figured out when we're going to start doing it, but we're going to actually deliberately test that and see just how big we can amplify the energy up. It's going to be a fun test, really.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I can't wait to hear your results either.
Yeah, I don't even know what the results are going to be. It's one of those things where I remember reading about it when I read the book. I remember seeing it when the movie came out. But I never really tried it. I never tested to see, can you actually amplify somebody else's energy and then amplify your energy by feeding energy to each other? I mean, it's certainly conceivable. It certainly makes sense. It could be done, but I just never tested it. So,
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm completely understanding what you're saying, but that's why I'm interested to hear how your testing works out. But I think I live that kind of on a regular basis, where I think I purposely talk to someone about something and let them mirror it back to me, and then it kind of stirs the pot as we continue to talk about it together.
Well, that's what occurred to me about the podcast, because I do the podcast with you and with 4 other co-hosts, and each time we're basically feeding each other's energy because we're talking about these positive subjects and in essence building each other up. So I guess in that sense, I've already proven to myself that you really can amplify somebody else's energy and vice versa. I guess I'm wondering, how far can you take it? How big can you make it? And there may not even be a limit to that. I don't know.
My guess is there's no limit, but you know what? Until you do it consciously, you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So we're going to try it consciously. I don't even know what test we're going to do. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we'll figure something out. It'll be fun, you know.
Well, I do know that, and I had this thought this morning, that ever since I've joined you on this show, things are moving at lightning pace in my life.
And mine too. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely, I feel the impact of the fact that we talk about this stuff every day. And, you know, to be on the show, I can't just sit back and just go, yeah, I'll be a passive listener. I mean, I'm an active participant and using my thoughts and ideas and allowing thoughts to flow through me. So it's energetic. I mean, it's like I said, there's nothing passive about what I'm doing. And so I feel like there is definitely more energy flowing through me and causing me to think new thoughts and have new desires and, you know, setting myself up with my own law of attraction test.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, as you were saying that, I realized that you're right. I mean, there's no passive part to this, but there is a relaxed part. That's the part that's fascinating. It's not a passive position, but as I'm talking to you on the podcast or talking to Cindy or Joel or Tom or David or whoever, I'm relaxed as I'm doing it. It's not like I have to get myself up to do this. This is, I mean, we start the show and like, I'm up. Okay, great, let's go. And then I just sit back and relax and enjoy it. And in the enjoyment, it just comes. It just flows so easily. So it's not like I have to do a lot of homework for each of these shows, you know? It's like it just goes. It just works. So maybe that's also an example of what happens when you have 2 people or more people engaged in feeding into it like we're doing here. Maybe that's another way of measuring the amplification. Don't know. But
could be.
It's a thought. Anyway, it does seem to tie into the topic really well. So let's go back to the topic. The topic is alignment. Is it required before we do anything? And it basically comes from, well, I can't say it comes from. Where I got it from was from Abraham-Hicks teaching, which is they say that we should always strive to be in alignment with our inner beings before we say or think or do anything. And it can be quite a challenge, to say the least, because so often we forget to even do it. Many of us do anyway. Wendy does it. Wendy remembers all the time. But the rest of us have a little trouble sometimes.
Well, and let's just kind of put out a little bit of a broader description, because not everyone totally understands the whole inner being concept. But when you get aligned into a space where you feel really good, really happy, where you don't feel the burdens of life, where you feel more relaxed, that state of being actually emits a vibration that is equal to the vibration that all the desires that we want are on.
Very good.
So that's why Abraham talks about it. You know, get into a happy place. And, you know, they often talk about meditation, but not for the sake of meditation, for the purpose and purposeful intent to let go of resistance, because meditation is really good to help you let go of resistance.
Right, yeah.
And when you let go of resistance, you tend to kind of buoy up, if you will, to a better feeling place where you feel happy, when you feel relaxed. And that's where you then go into a receiving mode where you can receive the things that you've desired.
Which is very true. That's a great description, by the way, and thank you for clarifying what all this stuff about alignment is really all about, because you're right, I just skipped right past the important part. You got to understand that part, otherwise none of it makes any sense. In fact, I should probably also mention and touch on the fact that Abraham defines very clearly what an emotion is in a way that I'd never heard before. I love their description of how it's your inner being or your non-physical being, and how in alignment or out of alignment it is with your physical being. The two pieces of you are either in alignment or out of alignment. When you're in alignment, you're feeling good. When you're out of alignment, you're feeling bad. And all the emotional, all the positive emotions are associated with being in alignment. All the negative emotions are associated with being out of alignment. When I heard that, I said, wow, that's the first concrete definition of emotion I ever heard. I'd never heard one before that made any sense.
Well, and so our inner being, or the part of us that is not physical, always holds us in the highest and best regard. That part of us is always thinking about how to create things for us that will truly allow us to feel a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. Whereas the part of us that's not physical, that has come into the physical body, because we interact with life, with people, with colleagues, with, people at the grocery store, people at car dealerships. We're interacting with people all the time in our family. We have absorbed all sorts of, I guess I'll call them erroneous beliefs or thoughts that sometimes don't serve us, but also can be very disjointed from how our source energy, our non-physical self, believes for us. And so the difference between what we in physical form think about something versus how our source energy thinks about something, there can be a gap. And that gap is what causes the emotion. And when we are feeling like almost the same because our source being feels great about something and we're feeling great about something, that's how we get those positive emotions. But when we're out of sorts or out of touch with how our source being thinks about a subject, that's when we feel icky or frustrated or angry or mad or whatever.
I love the technical
term.
term.
What that gap is.
I love that technical term, icky. That's really very precise. I like that.
They don't use icky, but I use icky.
I think it's an excellent term. I think you should go down in the lexicon. That's how good it is.
Thank you. Well, it pretty much covers all negative emotions.
It does. And it's really interesting when we just define it the way, by the way, you just defined it brilliantly. I want to acknowledge you for that. But when you define it all this way, a number of things become really, really clear. Probably the first thing that becomes clear is all of the times that we feel negative or positive emotion and we associate it with some person outside of ourselves or some object or some experience or event, we're really not being honest with ourselves. It's not that outside event, person, thing, whatever. It's in us. It's simply our reaction to whatever it is we're dealing with. But we are the ones who are having the reaction. And that's both actually a bit dramatic because we don't really think about stuff like that. We think that, well, my girlfriend left me, so I'm hurt because she left me. No, that's not what it is at all. But that's certainly the way we think about it, right? So it's an entirely different way of thinking.
The meaning you're giving to the girlfriend leaving you, your response to that, if you're thinking it feels icky, it's letting you know, it's an indicator that your source being doesn't think it's icky or it's bad. Your source being thinks of all the positive things that are going to come from the letting go of this relationship. And if we don't see it that way, then we stay in the icky.
And as I think about it, I realize that there have been many times I've stayed in the icky mode because I disagreed with my inner being. I didn't realize I was disagreeing with it, but I was. My inner being was saying, no, this is fine. I was saying, no, it's not. This is terrible.
Well, the chapter that I wrote for the book, it was so funny to me how after I finished writing it, because the story I tell was before I knew about the law of attraction.
Right.
First of all, it was cool to see how law of attraction was at work, whether I was aware of it or not.
Yes.
But I recognized I had so many ups and downs and roller coasters in my life before that event that I thought that would not be the case today, because I see things different. I have greater awareness. I understand now how a negative emotion is actually a message to me, letting me know that I'm out of sorts with the greater truth that is available to me. And now in my life, I know when I feel icky, I know how to reach for, okay, inner being, what is it that you think on this that I'm somehow missing? And instead of staying in that negative place, I start looking toward what's the point of view that I'm not yet seeing. Because I know once I have that point of view, then again, I'll buoy right back up into feeling great. But when I didn't know law of attraction, I didn't know that. And I'd eventually come back into a good feeling place just because I'd prefer to feel better. And, sometimes time getting away from something, does help. But I didn't have a strategy. I didn't know that looking towards something better for my future was actually going to take me out of the state. And so I think the thing that I manifested, in that chapter took a really long time because it just sort of law of attraction had to wait for me to get my act together.
Yeah.
And get back into a better feeling place so I could be in the receptive mode to have the good things flow through. So, I think about how patient our inner being is with us, and it's pretty darn amazing.
It is. And I'm also realizing that our listeners, who, of course, have not yet read the story that you're referring to because they haven't seen the book yet because the book is not yet published, are wondering, what the heck are they talking about? And we're not going to tell you just yet. But what we will tell you is this. First of all, I got to tell you, Wendy, after reading that story and realizing that you did not know how the law of attraction worked at the time, I have to give you credit for tremendous amounts of persistence in the face of unbelievable negative experience at times. And yet you continue to just stick with it and just stay in the best possible place you could have been to get to the next phase. So, I mean, that just speaks to your character because you didn't even know that's what you were supposed to do and you did it anyway. And that's just really phenomenal. And then I also want to tell listeners, you're going to get a chance to find out what's in the story because the book is going to be coming out. Now, I do want to remind you the best way to know when the book is coming out, because our listeners are going to get advanced crack at the book. I want to let people know about that. If you're already a listener, you're going to get a crack at the book before any of the buying public even sees it. The only way that can happen, of course, is if you're a subscriber. So if you are not yet a subscriber, please make sure that you do subscribe. A number of ways to do it. You can do it directly at the website, loatoday.net. Click on any of the buttons that say click here to subscribe. On an iPhone, you can also do it by going to the iTunes store and doing a search on LOA Today, or even to your podcast software that's built into the iPhone. Again, doing a search there for LOA Today, it'll pop right up. On an Android phone, such as a Motorola or a Samsung or an IO or Nokia or one of those, any of those Android operating system phones, you have to go to the Play Store first and make sure you download some sort of podcast manager app because it doesn't come built in. And in fact, there's a free one you can download called Podcast Manager app. Isn't that a clever name? And once you download it, then you open up the app, do a search on LOA Today, and we'll pop right up there. But whichever way you do it, whichever kind of phone you have, doesn't matter. Just make sure you subscribe because that's going to be how you know that the book is coming out, when it's coming out, and when you can get a hold of it so that you can read Wendy's terrific story in it. And by the way, I'm going to also give you another teaser. There is going to be a limited opportunity to get the book for free. So you definitely want to subscribe. In fact, you also want to take the time to tell friends about not only this podcast that you're listening to, but about the opportunity coming up. And that the only way to do it is to be a subscriber. That's the only way you're going to find out about the freebie. So do it now. Don't wait, okay?
And the reason you're going to want the book is because it's going to be filled with 50 or more law of attraction coaches who have written about their experiences using the law of attraction to inspire you in different ways that maybe you've never considered how law of attraction can help you manifest some really terrific things in your life.
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you the stories that I'm seeing, because I'm the one who's editing the thing. As the stories are coming in, I am just blown away by the magnitude of some of the experiences that people have had, both deliberately and even undeliberately, in your case there, applying the law of attraction in their lives. I mean, some of these things sound like they would be too wild for even a Hollywood script, but they really happen. So you're definitely going to want to read these stories. They're inspirational. They will blow your mind open. And if you've had any doubt whatsoever about law of attraction before you read it, you won't have any afterward. It'll be crystal clear.
Yay.
Yay. So, I want to let you know, Wendy, that I decided to do that after I got into alignment. So I stayed true to our topic today.
Okay, so when you say you did that, what is that?
I put out the message. I told everybody why it was so important for them to be subscribers to the podcast. And I told them that it would be a good time to let their friends know because there's going to be a little freebie opportunity they're going to get. And I didn't do any of that until I was feeling good.
Right here, while we're doing the show,
yeah,
you practiced the art of getting into alignment before you actually talked about something.
And some might say that I cheated because everybody knows how much I enjoy doing the podcast, but that's not actually cheating. That's actually using your best tools available to you. And this podcast is one of the best tools available for me to get into a happy, aligned place. So I shamelessly used it.
Well, that's incredible and well done. And it can be as quick or as easy as just flipping a switch in your head where you make the decision that you're going to feel good. And if you're not feeling good in the moment, you can literally say, what can I do to feel better? Because when you focus your energy on feeling better and you just keep sticking with it for as little as 17 seconds, law of attraction will actually give you a step up and go, hey, here's another thought. And if you let yourself think on it for another 17 seconds, law of attraction will actually deliver you another thought. You know, I mean, it's so simple to get the things that we desire if we know the tools or the strategies of something like all you have to do is stick with a subject for 17 seconds, and then law of attraction helps you out.
That's right, yeah. And in fact, it's also an opportunity to pat yourself on the back because you recognized that you weren't in alignment. You recognized that you weren't feeling good, and that's not the best time to try to think about doing something or act on something or attract something or whatever it might be. You recognized it. That's a good thing right there. That alone is something that you can pat yourself on the back and get yourself feeling a little bit happy about. And then, like Wendy was saying, start focusing on, well, what else can I do to get there? And sure enough, it shows up.
And on the flip side, here's something where I used to miss the opportunity, is I would get an impulse for something that really was exciting to me. Like I said this morning, I got this idea to get this URL. And in the past, what I would do is just go, well, I'm going to think about that.
Yes.
Because I want to be absolutely certain that it's really a good idea.
That's right.
Well, by the time I've done that, I've now inserted so much doubt on the subject, and I've watered down my excitement. And so now it's like I lose the enthusiasm, and what that really means is that I've literally disconnected myself from that pure alignment of when that excitement was there.
Right. Yes.
And so this morning I practiced, hey, I'm in alignment right now. I'm so excited I could come out of my skin. I'm that happy and excited. And it's like, let's go check this out now and go to a source where I know I can purchase a URL and do it now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till tonight. Do it while the excitement is flowing. Mm-hmm. And it was a rush. It was an absolute rush when I pressed the button that said order now for the URL. Like, yes, I own it. And then I got the confirmation saying, this URL is now registered to you. And I'm like, woohoo!
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. It kind of reminds me of a show that Joel and I did about a week or two ago. I can't remember exactly when we did it, but it was called something like How to Increase the Power of the Secret a Million Times Over, because Joel had actually posted on this subject earlier that day, or the previous day, I guess it was. And so we decided to make that the topic. And he basically posted a methodical step-by-step method to ensuring that you can multiply the power of asking, the power of the secret. And would you like to hear what his step-by-step method was?
Yes, I would.
Okay. It was one step. Begin. Don't dither around. Don't try to plan it. Don't try to figure it out. Just start. Which is exactly what you did. Because it's the dithering that kills us. Just trying to figure it all out. Oh, I don't know. I gotta think about this. Is this really a good idea? That just kills ideas. It kills perfectly good ideas. Idea killers.
I mean, and I do know that, I haven't always practiced law of attraction, and even still today, sometimes I pop out of it and, get myself in a bleh kind of place. There's another technical term for you.
I'm not sure how to spell that one.
I'm filled with them today. So now it's the blah. But one of the things that I know that I have grown to know is that in the past I used to act or take action because I felt I needed to, or I had a deadline, or I should do it, or it's on my to-do list, and I just want to scratch it off the to-do list. But I felt really, and I would follow through with whatever it was I needed to do. And I got to tell you, one of two things generally happened. Either the person I needed to contact wasn't there, or the person that I did talk to was totally uncooperative, and I left the call just feeling really frustrated, or I just couldn't connect with anything, and I just ended up feeling bad. But the bottom line was always I ended up feeling bad, or worse than when I had even started, before I took the action. And so what I have learned now, understanding how law of attraction works, is, of course, when I was in a state of frustration and I was calling a vendor because they overbilled me for something and I want them to fix my bill, I'm ticked off when I call. Well, the law of attraction goes, oh, look, Wendy's feeling really ticked off. Let's give her another experience of ticked off because she's hung out on this subject for 17 seconds at least.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give her another thought or experience so she can be even more ticked off. And then, of course, I'd get into the call, and it would be getting me even more wound up. And law of attraction's like, oh, well, look at that. Look how much she's enjoying this because she keeps hanging out in this space. So, boom, I'd get more. Well, now I understand how I was responsible for creating that frustrating mess.
Yeah.
And so even though I'm a highly organized neat freak and very organized with time management, I love to get things checked off my to-do list, I trained myself to go, you know what, Wendy, it's not worth checking it off the to-do list if I'm not in a good place.
Yes.
Because if I'm in an icky place, I'm just going to get more of that, and I'm not going to get the result I'm really looking for. So let's just chill out till I get in a better place. And even if it's a day or two, before I get to act on it, it's better because I'm going to get a better outcome. Now, I will tell you, Walt, that kind of flew against my nature because I like to get things taken care of. So it took some realigning, if you will, just how I saw myself and what was really important to me. And I thought, you know what, feeling good, I want that to take a greater priority than checking things off my list.
That's good.
That didn't come natural. I had to actually say that to myself. Wendy, is it more important to check things off your list or to feel good? And I had to really think on that because the answer, feel good, didn't just pop up to the top. It's like, no, I really want to get stuff checked off the list.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. I kept getting stuff checked off the list, but I was feeling yuck all along the way until finally I had all the ugh I could stand, and I went, all right, let's try prioritizing feeling good and then see what happens.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing, though, how so many people will get upset about something, call the appropriate call center to try to get it fixed, and it won't get fixed, and it never does, and they don't recognize the pattern. Isn't that amazing we don't recognize the pattern? I mean, it takes a long time for many of us to recognize that pattern, and it can go on for years.
Well, and I told you the story where I made the same phone call 17 months in a row
yes, right.
before it finally got resolved, and it was probably the first 12 where I just kept beating my head against a wall, having the same horrible results until I went, oh, I'm beating myself against the wall. I keep getting the same results, and it's never good. I wonder how I'm affecting this equation.
And the scary part is every one of us probably has a similar story to that one. Maybe not calling a call center, but something that we just keep repeating the same negative behavior from the negative point of view over and over again, expecting to get a positive result, and we never get it, and we don't notice the pattern. It just kind of goes right by our heads. Like, we were there or something. I don't know. I don't fully get why we don't understand it. I mean, I do. I can look at scientific reasons. I can look at law of attraction reasons and so forth. But there's just another part of me that says, how on earth did we keep missing it? It's just so obvious. How can we miss it?
I think sometimes when we're so close to our own stuff, we literally don't see it.
I guess
we
that's it.
We can see it very well for other people.
Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah.
when it's our own stuff, it's so much harder.
Yeah, it's true. It's just, wow.
Do you know who Patty Stanger is, the $1 Million Matchmaker?
I've heard of her. I haven't really seen her stuff or anything, but I've heard the name.
So she's had a show on Bravo for many years, and then she switched to WeTV.
Okay.
But she's a matchmaker, and she has a club called the Millionaires Club, and she basically takes millionaires who have a hard time finding a romantic relationship, and she's an excellent matchmaker. She actually says she's third generation of matchmakers, so it kind of comes natural to her.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find fascinating, she's a law of attraction person. And I've watched her show for years, and I can tell by the things that she says to her clients and how she counsels or advises them, I'm like, oh, she's using an awful lot of buzzwords that say law of attraction to me.
Ah.
Well, I was listening to some YouTubes the other day, and I saw one that said, Patty Stanger from $1 Million Listing, or $1 Million Matchmaker, talks to Abraham, like, ooh, I want to listen to this. And now here, because I know her and I've watched her show for years, she's in her early to mid-50s. She's never been married.
Really?
She desperately wants to be married.
Oh, my goodness.
And even on the show, I mean, I remember she had one boyfriend. She was so excited, and she was with him for about 5 years. And then the next season started, and it started with, we broke up. We kind of went into the friend zone, realized, we really weren't good marriage potential partners, even though we had been engaged. And so I know her story. I've read her books. I've learned a lot about, like bringing people together. It's helped me. I've used her, information for others. But it's been fascinating how she herself has just been in such a forlorn state of mind because she's not been able to create the desire of her heart. So I'm listening to this Abraham clip with her, and she just says, there's something I've wanted to create that I've not done in this lifetime. I want to be married. Now, Abraham, and there was actually another clip she did like months before, so she's been to 2 Abrahams in the same year, and she got in the hot seat and she asked her questions, and Abraham pretty much said to her what she says to everyone else, except she goes, in your case, we normally tell somebody if there's something that you want really bad, get off the subject, distract. But you can't because it's your job. And Patty does her job 24/7. But what she said at the very end I thought was really cool, and it was very encouraging to Patty. And she said, or Abraham said, a strong desire will trump resistance or negative believing. When you desire and want something so bad, you can still make it happen. Now, that sounds great, and I know it encouraged her, but I also know that if Patty were to leave the stage with this great feeling and then start refocusing on, I hope it'll happen, it never happens, whatever, she'll still pull herself back into it not happening. Because she's not in an aligned place for herself. She offers much more resistance of why it's never happened. And I've even heard her on the show talk about it never happens for me. I don't know why I can't manifest a great partner.
And I can be sympathetic to that because I've done the same thing. I've even said here on these podcasts, I've said things like that, even realizing as I was saying it, that I was saying it, knowing that it was not the appropriate thing to do if I wanted to attract the opposite, and saying it anyway.
But when it's something like for her, her whole livelihood, everything she's involved with 24/7 is in the arena of that which she desires the most and that which seems to elude her. But I absolutely know it's a case of she's not allowing herself to be in a space of alignment where Because the thoughts she has about marriage, or I should say the thoughts about her finding a marriage partner, are so not in line with, I think, what anybody's inner being would be thinking on. But the kind thing at the end of her interview with Abraham said, there is a beautiful marriage in your vortex.
Well, that's good.
So it's like, it's there, but there are wonderful things in all of our vortexes ready for us.
Mm-hmm.
But are we allowing ourselves to get into a place where we can feel the enjoyment of it in advance so that it can manifest?
And that's why we want to be in alignment before we do anything. Because
Absolutely.
If we're in alignment before we do everything that we do, before we even think stuff, before we talk to people, before we take any kind of actions, if we are constantly making sure, checking our alignment and so forth, and not doing anything until we get aligned, then we start allowing stuff in. All the stuff that's been waiting for us starts to come in. And that to me is actually even more encouraging than you have this wonderful, beautiful marriage in your vortex. It's knowing how to get it out of there. That's really the key part, because if you know how that works, then you're on your way. In fact, your story there about Patricia reminds me of a story that Sean Aker, the positive psychologist, tells. He was once, I think he was actually giving a presentation at a corporation. He does a lot of those. And there was another speaker who spoke on the topic of sleep and how important it was to be fully rested in order to be your best self. He was even giving statistical information about how people who regularly get all the sleep that they could possibly need, regardless of what their business life is like, they tend to live longer, they're healthier, they look younger, they're more successful in their businesses, all this kind of thing. And let's see, I guess he wasn't there at the same time that this guy was talking, but he met him later on. And he expected to meet this guy who was young and feeling good and looked young for his age and all that kind of thing. And instead, what he met was this guy who he found out was in his 30s and looked like he was in his 70s.
Wow.
And he said, whoa, how is this possible? And so he gets talking to the guy and he says, but you know about all this stuff. You know how important it is to get enough sleep and so forth. What's going on? And the guy says, Sean, I'm a sleep researcher. I stay awake all night watching people sleep. I don't get any time to sleep.
Oh, my gosh.
Can you imagine?
Wild. Yeah, that is identically Patty's story.
Yeah.
The very subject of what he does 24/7 is causing him he's denying himself the very thing that he's helping others.
Exactly.
Because he's probably focusing on sleep disorder.
Yes.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing I think about when I realize just how easily we fall into that trap and stay there without even realizing that it's going on, despite all the evidence coming at us that, yes, this is what we're putting out. This is what we're getting back. It's going to keep going as long as we stay there. Despite all that, so often we don't change. So often we don't move. And as I've realized that, I realized something else. I am so sick of not moving. I want to learn how to do this right. I want to start focusing on what my alignment is. I want to learn that so bad. I want to completely change my lifelong habit of not checking my alignment. I want to make sure I'm feeling good before I do anything. I want to focus on that. I want to make that such a part of my life because somehow life broke through to me and said, hey, Walt, there's a pattern going on here. Look over here. And I listened.
Now, now tell me if I heard this right. I heard you make a connection to that part of yourself right now while you were talking on the show and making a commitment to yourself that you want to make a difference in your own life. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that happened right here fresh.
Right.
It wasn't something you're regurgitating for something you thought about earlier.
Well, no, I can't honestly say that I haven't thought about this because I have thought about it. I've thought about it a lot, and I've been trying to find a way to get myself to do it more consistently. I've been patting myself on the back because sometimes I have been remembering to do it, but I just haven't been doing it as often as I want to because I want to do it every time. And you're right, in this case with the show, I was taking advantage of the fact that we're talking about this to create, a declaration, an intention of, I'm going to remember it from now on because this is so important to me. And here are all the reasons why I think it's so important to me.
Yeah, because that's what I heard. I heard a fresh, alive, declaration.
Yes.
That was like, wow, that was potent, that was big, and I can't imagine that the law of attraction didn't take notice and go, okay, we have heard him. This is an increased vibration from his broadcast that we've never quite gotten before. So, yeah, we're going to amp this one up for him, and we'll provide him all sorts of goodies so that he can get on board.
Sometimes I kind of imagine there's like a control room, the law of attraction control room. Increased signal over on the Thiessen vehicle.
Yeah. I think we all have those little control room, whatever, bots who are working for us, kind of pulling the levers and switches.
Oh my goodness, we just created a new concept, LOA bots. Hey, at least they're not viruses. That's good,
I mean, I've played with this before. It's like, what is law of attraction? It's not a person. We call it the universe, but the universe is not a person or a personality. The universe has consciousness. And so, I think sometimes it's easier to imagine something if you put some kind of personification around it. So even a bot, which is kind of like artificial intelligence, I like knowing that there's a somebody or something pulling the switches.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talk about things like inner beings and outside experiences and so forth. And what we're really talking about is us with us, but it's easier when you think about it in terms of an outside person. I mean, you don't want to convince yourself that it's not part of you. That's the wrong place to go. But it's certainly easier to talk about my relationship with my inner being than to say my relationship with myself. Because you just keep using the same pronouns over and over again, and you can't even tell what you're talking about anymore. Because you need the differentiation, It's important to have that differentiation.
Well, because when Abraham talks about our relationship between you and you, I mean, it took me a long time to go, what the heck are they talking about?
And one's capitalized and one's lowercase. And I still, to this day, don't know why one's capitalized and one's lowercase, but it is for some reason.
Well, and my best guess is that the uppercase you is the non-physical part of us, because they always refer to that as the larger part of us, or the broader perspective. And so perhaps the lowercase u is the part of us that came into physical form. That's my guess.
Okay. Well, that's a reasonable hypothesis. We'll go with that one for the moment.
It works for me.
So this whole thing about alignment then, this thing about alignment proves to be not just important, not just critical, but the basis of life, doesn't it? I mean, isn't all life based on whether you're in or out of alignment, and the quality of that life is directly tied to it?
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty significant.
Yet so few people are even aware of what makes the difference between a positive experience and a negative one.
That's really the thing, isn't it? Because so many of us are not aware. I mean, how long have I been studying law of attraction? And I only really got this concept, this one particular concept about being in alignment within the last 6 months. And I've been studying since, like, The Secret came out.
Wow, and that was like in 2006.
Yeah, I think I actually found it in 2008, but it was shortly afterward. And yeah, all this time, and I'm just now realizing how important alignment is. In fact, it makes me want to go watch The Secret again and see, does The Secret say that? Do you remember?
What, talking about alignment?
Yeah, and being in alignment before you do anything.
I just watched it the other night.
Yeah, I remember. That's why I thought you might remember.
And if that was there, it didn't stand out enough for me to have really grabbed that thought from there. I think the majority of it they spend talking about being in a positive state or believing something positive.
Yeah. So they kind of hint at it. But I mean, this is like fundamental. This is like you can't even do it successfully without this. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can't do it successfully if you intend to do it as a deliberate creator, producing a happy life for yourself.
Yeah, you can't do it deliberately. I mean, I've created some pretty magnificent things in my life, but it took time. There was a lot of pain involved, and it was through a lot of perseverance.
Right.
It wasn't the way Abraham talks about how our life was really intended to be, which was easy.
Yes.
Oh, and fun, and have lots of excitement and satisfaction, but easy.
Yes. Isn't it interesting, too, how many success stories from, famous success stories, famous people, how many of them got famous, became successful because they were persistent? They stuck with it through, high tide and low, through thick and through thin. They just kept going and going. Nothing could stop them, and that's why they ended up getting there. And we actually treat that as a virtue.
Well, and I think because the ones that have been highly successful are the ones that are keynote speakers. They're the ones who do TED Talks. They're the ones that we write about. They're the ones that we see documentaries about,
right.
the big inventors of this world. And we hear their strategies, and I think it is commonplace to get the idea, well, do what they did, and you'll get those types of results.
Well, they often teach that. They just say, do what I do. It's not even like inferred. It's direct. It's like, this is part of the program.
Well, and what's interesting for me is I kind of go against that now. I didn't before. But I tried to do what they did, and I wasn't getting those results, and I was seeking for, how come?
Yeah.
I'm smart. I'm really persistent. What's up with this? And that's why law of attraction made so much sense to me, because it helps me understand how oftentimes I was, creating resistance by not knowing how to focus on the positive, and just so many different facets as to why it wasn't easy and things weren't happening. And I now absolutely, like when I hear somebody who has overcome incredible adversity to get a positive result, of course I applaud, because I think it's a part of human nature that when you have that level of perseverance, it's something worthy of applause. However, I also look at it differently now, and I think it didn't have to be so hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't intended to be so hard. As a matter of fact, if you know the inner workings of law of attraction, you'll find out it could be really easy, because, the intention of when we came into this physical existence is that we already knew about law of attraction, so we understood about synchronicity and how things would be organized on our behalf without even our knowledge of it, and we just needed to line up with it and be in a space of feeling good and receiving, and it would just show up. But, we forgot that when we came into physical beings.
That's the part that annoys me. Why did I forget that? I mean, I intended to remember it, and I didn't remember it. How could I have forgotten something as important as that? But I did.
Well, and that's a question I've asked many times, and I feel as though the answer lies in the fact that so many other people have forgotten also, that the people that we look to, our parents, our teachers, our grandparents, the authorities in our life, if they've already forgotten that they're magnificent creatures of incredible reality and how they can create their own reality, even if we as little teeny people, little beings, we're believing and knowing about the law of attraction. Even if we're pre-verbal, we know about how this is supposed to work. But then we start to absorb what we're modeling.
This is true.
And if the rest of the world's not on the same wavelength, we're like, oh, well, gosh, maybe I ought to go over here because I like to fit in. That's just kind of a natural part of our being.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. And in fact, in my own case, I mean, you talked about how early on you would try to stay persistent and stick with persistence because that's what the guru said, and that's how you get to your final goal and so forth. And indeed, many people have gotten to successful places by being persistent. But the part of that message that's missing is not only the alignment part, but also the fact that if you aren't in alignment, you can persistently get yourself not to your goal, to the wrong result. That's the part that's missing. And that's what I did. For the first, let's see, how long was it? I started my first business in 95, and I started learning this current concept about being in alignment in the past years, so that's roughly 21 years. So for 21 years, I just struggled persistently. I was just going to persistently get through this. I was going to work hard and persist and persist and persist, and I didn't get anywhere. I mean, I made no progress at all. I kept a roof over our heads. I kept food on the table. It started to wane after some time because my belief really got clobbered by failure after failure after failure. But I persisted, and I didn't realize that I was persisting on the wrong thing. I was persisting on, well, just persist, keep doing the same thing over and over again. Well, you can't do that.
When I went to the Abraham Cancun land cruise a couple years ago, one of the biggest takeaways I came home with was how it was really I was ready to stop working so hard because I had finally been convinced, and not like they beat you over the head to convince you, but I had heard it enough over and over that I went, what on earth am I waiting for to allow myself to receive this understanding that life is supposed to be easy? And so I started looking at how I made my life hard on a regular basis because of the beliefs I held or because of the habits that I continued to, do over and over. And so when I came home from that cruise, and I think that was about 2 years ago, I started to really pay attention to every action and every thought and ask myself, okay, am I about to do it the hard way again? And oftentimes the answer was, yeah. And then I'd stop and go, okay, well, if I don't want to do it the hard way, what's the easy way? And here's where it got a little sticky for me, because the hard way was just keep taking action even though I'm not in alignment.
Right.
And that was where I said I had a serious talk with myself. Am I willing to prioritize happy over checking the box because I got stuff taken care of on my to-do list? And so it felt really uncomfortable at first, adjusting to I'm not supposed to take action because I'm not in a good place yet. And then eventually I started to notice, I had an impulse to make a phone call, and that person just happened to have been walking through the office, and they picked up the phone, where normally they're never in the office, and we were able to have the conversation that was necessary, and I got a good result. And I hung up going, that was easy. Like I couldn't have even planned it or orchestrated it any better.
Wow, that's good.
And then I'd go, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Then I'd say, well, I remember there was this little teeny nudge inside of me, in more technical terms.
That's right.
There's this little nudge that said, call now. And I didn't go, should I? Well, I don't know. It was really number 3 on my list, and I was about to do number 1. It's like I just did it. And I started noticing when I was getting these really positive results, it came as a result of me just following these little nudges or impulses and not talking back to it, not second-guessing it, not saying, well, but I had other things on my agenda that I really wanted to do instead. I just did it. And when I did, I was so pleasantly surprised at the positive results I got that actually started creating a momentum for me of, I think I'm starting to understand what it feels like when I get into the space of alignment, when I get into that happy zone. And I noticed the impulses just started popping in more and more, which meant, I think this is what Abraham talked about. I'm in a receiving mode because I'm receiving the nudge, I'm receiving the impulse, I'm receiving the hit to take an action. And I started making the connection between the feeling to do it and the actual action. So it doesn't mean I don't take action anymore. I just let myself take it when I know I'm in a great place and when I feel the impulse to take that action. And boy, I got to tell you, those actions are awesome.
And that's, of course, the time to do it. I mean, we only have about a minute and a half left before less than that, before we have to sign off. But I'll just say that I stuck with the pattern of persisting, do it regardless whether I'm in alignment for so long that I can't even do it anymore. So that's one of my best reminders for whether or not I'm out of alignment or in alignment. Do I feel like doing it? No. I must be out of alignment. And I'll just leave us on that thought because there's no time left. We don't have time to go into the details, but just a reminder, if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. Go back to about the 20-minute mark of the show. You'll find out how to do it. And Wendy, if they need more personal assistance, how do they get some coaching from you?
They could check out my website at wendydillard.com. If you like telephone calls better, my phone number's there. If you like emails better, my email's there.
Very cool.
As that.
Excellent. Wendy, this is great. As usual, we always have a winner. We had another one today. Let's do it again tomorrow.
You got it.
All right. We'll see you all tomorrow here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.